Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to this special edition of the NYC Mare Nostrum Talks. This is the fourth edition we're having. And today we're exploring a bit more on youth participation, how it's reshaping regional cooperation. And we have two special guests, Giulia and Selma from the Union for the Mediterranean, which are doing an amazing job in stepping up to support young voices across the Mediterranean as well. And as we know, the Union for the Mediterranean is an institution playing a key role in shaping inclusive and sustainable cooperation in the Mediterranean, but we'll let them explain that better. And I would suggest to do a bit of a round of presentations if you want to go ahead. Giulia, please start.
Thank you, Camilla. Thank you to everybody who joined us. I see some familiar faces because indeed the UFM and the Mediterranean Youth Council have been, let's say, already collaborating with some initiatives. So it's always nice to be again here with you. As you introduced me correctly, I'm Giulia Dimonopoli and I work at the Union for the Mediterranean, specifically for the Social and Civil Affairs Division and responsible for the youth engagement dossier. Today I'm here with Selma Essafi. She is our intern. And so beside the institutional presentation of the UFM, which might be familiar already to some of you, and also the presentation of some initiatives that we are currently focusing on, then Selma will also enrich the conversation by presenting the internship program that we run and that she is part of. So this is in a nutshell. I'm really excited to be here with you. And maybe also, Selma, if you want to introduce yourself, you're welcome.
Sure. Hello, everyone, and thank you very much for having me. So my name is Selma Essafi. I'm from Tunisia. I just graduated last June. Well, it has been some time now from the College of Europe, and I did the neighborhood policy as my specialization. So right now, the UFM, I'm sort of seeing practically what my theoretical knowledge looks like in the real world. And I work with Giulia, but also I work on the other dossier in the SCA division, the Social Affairs division, which is women. And I'm so happy to be here. Thank you for having me.
Okay, amazing. Just to give a little bit of an overview of the agenda or points that we'll touch upon. This is an open discussion, so we are happy to make it evolving as topic come up. But we were thinking, as we mentioned before, to introduce a little bit what the UFM does, also how it supports youth participation and engagement, insights maybe on previous program they've done, and also we have been involved with on youth participation in the Med region, and also if we feel like it also challenges and opportunities that Mediterranean youth can faces in the Mediterranean in general, but also programs and maybe fundings. And I'm really curious to hear about Selma's experience being in the traineeship program of the UFM. So looking forward for that. Ale, would you like to add something or present yourself, perhaps?
Yeah, sure. I mean, you all already presented the topic of today in an excellent way. So I will just briefly present myself. My name is Alessandro Agnetti, and I'm among the founders of the NYC and former president of the council. And right now, I am in the ending phase of my experience in the NYC, but still, I'm very happy to see how the council is keeping itself active through initiatives like this.
Okay, amazing. Then Giulia, I'll leave you the word if you'd like to start.
Of course. Thank you. Thank you so much. So I mentioned I have a presentation. Maybe I'll share it.
Yes, you should be able to share it.
Yeah. Here we go. You should see my screen?
Yeah, we can see exactly. Perfect.
Very nice. So straight to the point. I plan to start this presentation with some, let's say, details and data on the UFM. I assume again that some of you are familiar with it, but we are an intergovernmental organization and we reunite 43 member states, including the EU27 members, plus the countries in the Mediterranean region. We have a secretariat which is based in Barcelona, where I'm also based, that was funded in 2008. Our mission, it's emerging from the Barcelona Declaration, and actually this year we are celebrating the 30th anniversary of it. So it's really inspired by the idea of regional cooperation and having the UFM as a tool to actually create a Mediterranean region where both the economical and human development it's inclusive and guaranteed to all the member states. Here you can have, sorry, I will move the camera. Here you can have a little view of what we focus on in terms of also thematic priorities. So, for example, I work for the Social and Civil Affairs Division, which is one of the currently 6 divisions that we have. Maybe the interesting fact is that the UFM is currently undergoing a reform process in which we are actually revising and let's say updating our mission, but also our very structure in terms of priorities we focus on and organization. And maybe I will share some more insight on that later, but specifically youth engagement will play a role in this new asset of the UFM, both in its structure, because as let's say in line with the recent trends also from the European Union and other international organizations, youth is being recognized as a topic which is cross-cutting to different priorities, like for example climate, energy, economic development. So this is also the direction we are taking. In terms of how we work, let's say that in general the initiative of the UFM can be related to 3 main areas. The highest level of political commitment that the UFM convene is through the ministerial conferences and declaration. We do periodically ministerial declarations that are signed by the UFM member states on the key topics we work on. The priorities, let's say, and the challenges and the good practices that are gathered in this ministerial cooperation, this ministerial declaration approved by ministers of the UFN countries are then, let's say, implemented, put in action with concrete projects, events, initiative grants through what we call the platform for dialogue, which are basically platform actually spaces and occasion to gather that the UFM gives to both representatives of the, let's say, of the member states, but also civil society organization, private sector, academia, in order to implement the ministerial declaration in a way that are inclusive and then also like take into consideration the different needs and challenges of the different parts of the society. Then there is a third pillar that we work on, which are the project. This is done in different ways. For example, we have a successful example of grant scheme, which is launched, which have been launched for several editions, focusing each time for each, let's say, batch on different thematics as the green transition, digitalization, and so on. So this is a way, and then we have what we call the labeled project, which are like independent project, not organized or owned, let's say, by the UFM, but that apply to a process for having kind of UFM recognition and support in terms it might be of visibility or technical assistance in some cases. So this is in a nutshell what we are and how we work on. As I mentioned, our different thematic priorities and the current, let's say, reform we are undergoing specifically has been recognizing youth as something that is transversal, because of course we do recognize that when we talk about young people of the Euro-Mediterranean region, we are not talking about a group which is homogeneous. The composition of young people of this region is really variegate, and so are the challenges that they face and the consequences that affect them related to current challenges like covered by our thematic priorities. This is specifically true at the global level, but in the Mediterranean region, because it's a very young region, let's say. And in some southern, specifically countries of the Mediterranean, we can have up to 60% of the population which is under 30. The main, let's say, challenge faced that we also consulted, let's say, and confronted our stakeholder on are related to the area of unemployment, specifically in the MENA region with high rates. In general, a gender gap that is perceived and it's a reality both in the working sector, but also in education. Sometimes with a reverse trend in which women are actually more educated or have higher certificates and recognition at the academic level, but then when it comes to the employment field, there the trend is reversed. Also taking into account that there is also a gap between these two very important steps of, let's say, development of a person, specifically in a young age, which are the education and the employment, because we have also high rates of young people who are not doing either of these two things, so are the famous NINI, so the not employed or education target, let's say. All of this, of course, as we were saying, young people is not like a separate group, but is part of the society affected by the exact same challenges as the other age groups, let's say. Young people specifically are shall be at the core also of decision that are related to challenges that we can already foresee, like displacement and climate change. All of this is specifically a challenge in a region where the representation at the institutional level of young people is very low, reaching, as here said, 16% in some OECD country when it comes to political representatives under 40. So in this context, what the UFM tries to do is to bring, let's say, the institutional part as an intergovernmental organization that we are to young people, both in terms of building a dossier, the youth dossier, which is a pretty recent one. It was officially established around 4 years ago. So establishing a youth dossier based on solid consultations with the youth organizations, with youth experts and so on, but also, and this is the let's say the pattern that we are, or the way that we are currently going to with the reform, actually embedding youth point of view, let's say, in the very same structure and decision-making process of the UFM. So, for this purpose and in this framework, we are guided basically by one document, which is the UFM Youth Agenda. And again, as I said, this was developed through consultation that we held online with both with institutions, so our co-presidency, the European Commission, but also civil society organization, and specifically an organization working and led by young people, including the Mediterranean Youth Council, actually. This document, let's say, identified in the realm of the different challenges and priorities that need to be tackled, identify 3 areas on which the scope and let's say the possibility of the UFM Youth Dossier can be and are actually prioritized when we designed our initiatives. These 3 areas are climate action and environment, education, employment, and social inclusion and participation. And specifically for each of these areas, the youth agenda also includes some recommendation or call to action, let's say, for both decision maker and civil society organization to, let's say, to contribute to the involvement of young people in this or across these 3 thematic areas. Let's say if the UFM Youth Agenda identifies the thematic priorities, so let's say the topics we focus on with our initiatives, a document that we presented last November 2024, the youth engagement outcome document, it's on the other hand the document that guide our methodology for working with youth. So also in the case of this publication, we drafted it based on online consultation, again with our same target. So this really, again, idea of platform of having like a connection, a bridge between the different parts of the society, also the institutions. And basically here in this document, we recognized what are the characteristics that are really inclusive, meaningful, and multi-generational policy dialogue or multi-stakeholder dialogue shall have. So, for example, I know you are probably very familiar with these problems given your participation to the Mediterranean Youth Council, but the idea is to design initiatives at the UFM level that avoid tokenism, that have a clear and inclusive representation of the different countries and member states that we have, and again, also that are really intergenerational and cross-cutting, based on this idea that we don't have to treat young people as a separate group compared to others. Again, some recommendation, because this is also our way to advocate to the representative of our member states to take this into consideration at the national policy level. So the document, again, has some recommendation for us, ourselves, so to transform the UFM in a structure that actually implement and apply this let's say this approach presented in the document, then for the member states, so to act at the national level, but also for civil society organization, so that to, let's say, suggest possible solution to create this really multi-stakeholder dialogue where youth are at the center. So what I've just presented with these 2 documents is, let's say, more or less the policy framework that guide us. How we translate this into concrete activities. So there is some part, as I mentioned, the consultation that we do, mainly focus on dialogue and policy. And then there is a second, let's say, type of initiative that we focus on, which are the one related to skill building. One and the main, let's say, flagship initiative on skill building that we have specifically targeted youth is the UFM Youth Lab, which is an initiative organized by us, the UFM, with the support of the German Development Corporation, GIZ. And basically, we held the first edition last year in November 2024 in Fez, Morocco. And now I'm going to present it to you, also the second edition that we are going to launch for 2025, so actually very, very soon. The idea of this capacity building initiative is actually to focus on project development. Why? Because we've seen also through our policy initiatives and publication that actually there are very good proposal, solution, ideas that are pushed and implemented by young experts or also youth organization led actually by young people. Sometimes what is missing is also a knowledge of how to translate this into something that is more institutional, a project proposal, basically, that can be submitted to the attention of funding organization or international organization. So we really wanted to focus on this aspect. And in fact, like our target is to reach for each edition around 60 participants. Last year we had 63, so we exceeded the target with a good representation of around 25 UFM member states. And basically, the idea is to have a training and then hands-on workshop, let's say, to create a project proposal from zero, including, I don't know, the analysis of the stakeholders, the planning of the activities, and also like how to calculate a budget. Then, since we like to actually push our participant to put the knowledge in practice as soon as possible, we also organize during the MedYouth Lab a pitch event where these project proposals are presented. We receive feedback by jurors together with, let's say, information of possible frameworks or calls that can actually support these projects. As I mentioned, this year we are going to run the second edition, which I don't know if some of you I think are familiar with last year edition. This year is going to be slightly different because we'll have it will be a hybrid initiative with our online training on the fundamental project development, so making the theory online with webinars and a self-paced course, and then having the workshop where actually the project proposal are created by the team groups of participants in Tirana, Albania, at the end of September. This year, we run consultations and we selected 3 specific topics aligned, of course, with the UFM agenda that will be the core of the project proposal developed by the participants. So these themes are youth and climate adaptation, youth from education to work, and youth in peace building. This opportunity is open for participants who are under 30 and from the UFM member states. We are going to launch a call for participants very soon. It's expected to be online in the next 2 weeks. So you can definitely have a look at it and apply if you are eligible, of course. And this initiative, as all the other events, publications, funding, targeting youth, are available on the UFM for Youth landing page. So here I added the link. Of course, I will share this presentation with Camilla and Alessandro after the episode, so you can directly access it. There is the portal, the UFM portal, where we list everything that we do that is related to youth across our different thematic priorities. And actually, on this line, I will also mention an initiative that is currently open for application that is specifically focused on energy and climate action. So we launched very recently, yesterday actually, a youth delegate program on this topic, energy and climate action. And basically the idea is to select a number of projects, ideas, or proposal for collaboration with the UFM that will benefit from a shadowing, let's say, with the UFM staff, and also support in organizing, I don't know, side events, drafting publication, also in the framework of international events and conferences, like, for example, the COP30. So this possibility is currently open for application by no later than the 25th of May. Also here you will have the links to some frequently asked questions, the guidelines and everything. So again, there are some eligibility criteria. If you are eligible for this, you are of course warmly welcome to submit your application, actually get closer to the UFM. I think, yes, that I will leave the Selma to switch the slide. But yeah, this was what I wanted to present to you in terms of activity that we do and our mission in general. So if you have any questions, any specific comment of what I presented, of course, you're welcome to take the floor. I will leave to Camilla for now.
Yeah. First of all, it's amazing to see how the UFM is supportive towards youth with these programs. And I love the fact that the youth lab was very practical, because these are all skills that we actually need, and are those that gets us closer to our goal. So amazing. I'm actually looking forward to, or if you can give us some examples of projects you remember in the pitch competition. But another question I also had was in the consultation process that you mentioned with the civil society organization, youth organizations. Is there a way to ensure that all regions are covered, that there is inclusive representation from North, South, Mediterranean, all of that? Many thanks.
Thank you. Thank you for the question. So I will go first with the first one. In terms of projects of the Med Youth Lab that were presented last year, we also had 3 thematic clusters. They were slightly different. So I don't remember the one on climate. No, we had green skills. Then we have vocational training, and then youth participation in multi-stakeholder dialogue. So the variety of proposals that were presented were actually related to that, but very, very, very different. There was a focus specifically a lot on giving like involvement of rural areas. We noticed that this is a topic that is coming up more and more, specifically when it comes to projects, for example, to give some capacities to women specifically. Some of them were focused on rural women to have an income. So this kind of project that combine, let's say, practical skills that can be in the creative sector, for example, and then like target this specific let's say, group of rural women to create an income. But then there were, like, for example, in the cluster for youth participation in policy dialogue, there were also proposal for city councils to actually allocate spaces for young people and to have young people participate in this decision process when it comes to actually also the design of our cities, to creating spaces that are let's say, that facilitate the exchange among youth. So really, really a variety. The idea is also that the teams that come up with this project and present this project are created during the Med Youth Lab itself, because we want to create projects that are as much as possible regional or with, let's say, multi-state. And also these allow participants, when it comes, for example, to do a stakeholder analysis, to have a regional look on, let's say, the different actors that can support this specific project proposal. So let's say we do have thematic focuses, but we also want to give the tool and then to leave the idea to the teamworks. So this is your fourth question. Your second one, help me to recall it.
Was when you, in the consultation process, how do you make sure that there is a full representation of the different regions and civil society, youth from different areas, a bit like this?
Well, when it comes to youth specifically, also at the institutional level, we have challenges, because usually these are merely related to civil society. But when it comes to youth specifically, for example, in some of the UFM countries, not only UFM countries, but there is no ministry directly working on youth. And sometimes when the ministry is there is a portfolio. It's usually mixed with other priorities, like, I don't know, usually sports, but also religion or communication, like in the case of Greece. So also, like, we face sometimes these kind of challenges also at the institutional level to have geographical balance in the representation. Then of course there are countries that also from the civil society are more sensitive to this, let's say, to the involvement of young people, the other. So let's say, when it comes to initiative like the MedYouth Lab, where the participants are selected via call for application, what we try to do is to be as clear as possible on the eligibility criteria, and then considering also the geographical balance when selecting the participants. Also, something that we invested on was a mapping of civil society organizations operating in the region, which are youth-led, so specifically led, not only focusing on young people. So we had we created this mapping, and we always try to find channels where publishing our initiatives that are actually also extending, let's say, our reach. Then, when we analyze the word representation, it's also difficult to have a common understanding sometimes, because we hear a lot, specifically in institutional events, let's say, organizer remarking the involvement of youth representative, but what makes someone a representative of someone else, so this is something that actually I think the Mediterranean Youth Council is one of the possible models that overcome this, because the members are elected, so somehow there is a legitimization of the representation of the members of the Med Youth Council in the region, let's say, for the young population of the region. What we try to do is to reach, let's say, as much as possible the regional levels of organization, again, as yours, and we already have concrete example of the MedYouth Lab of last year, but also in all the previous consultation that I mentioned, we already have like examples how we relied on you to have this regional reach, and we try to do the same with also other organizations that we partner with in this sense.
Okay, this is amazing to hear, because actually one conversation that we often have is how some of our members or youth have a harder time to reach their governmental level as member states in the UFM, perhaps. So indeed, to ensure there is at least regional representation and clear youth voices without other inputs, it's fundamental. Okay, Selma, if you want to tell a little bit more about your experience, because I'm also super curious. And afterwards, we could also open for questions.
Sure, thank you. Giulia, I think we can't see the presentation anymore.
I'll share it. I'll share it if you want
Thank
to. A ver.
Great.
Okay.
Okay, so the internship, it's an internship program, and it lasts normally 6 months with a possibility of extension. So there's normally per year 2 rounds of internship, and each division has 1 or 2 interns normally, plus 1 in the cabinet. And right now there are 3 open positions. I put them on top. So there's still like 1 week to apply. So if anyone listening is interested, then they should run and send their applications. So the compensation for the internship is 550 euros if you are a local, but you also get an allowance if you are from abroad. And you can only submit your applications through the website, so no spontaneous applications. One question I get a lot from my friends and people who are not from Europe is whether the UFM supports with visa, and they do, hence why I am here. And to be eligible for this internship, you have to be under 30, obviously from one of the countries, and you have to be able to sign an internship agreement. So you have to either be a student or a recent graduate. So 1 year after you graduate, if your university allows it. And then you have to be available for 6 months because it's a full-time internship. You have to be physically here every day. And then you wait a little bit for the procedures to have the paperwork to be able to start working. And here it says previous work experience is a plus, but it's not a requirement. This is overall the structure of the internship. And now I will talk a little bit about my experience. If we can I turn the slide or yeah, voilà. So this is my desk, which I'm looking at right now. When I was working on the presentation, I took this picture, and I wanted to start by saying a little bit what I do concretely. I work with Giulia in the Social and Civil Affairs division. So I work on two dossiers, the youth dossier and the women dossier, and I do any task that I can support on and that we all deem that it's interesting for me to learn. So I do a lot of administrative stuff like emails, obviously, like any interns, like emails, Excel, PowerPoints. But then I also help with content sometimes to draft concept notes or the content for the website. And to do this, I have to be up to date with what happens. So I listen to a lot of webinars that the team sends me, or I read on the internet what happens on a variety of subjects. On youth, what is happening in the commission, on women, peace and security for women. And I think that's very enriching. I help with meeting minutes, and but the most interesting thing is that sometimes big events happen at the UFM here at the Palau, like the senior officials meeting. We have one tomorrow, and then all the interns get to be involved, and we get to interact with senior officials, diplomats, and everything like that. And that's extremely interesting because all the discussions there, I feel like are relevant for me as a young person from the Mediterranean. Because before all of this, when I was in Tunisia, I used to go to events organized by the UFM or like the EU and everything like that. And I really feel like it has been a full circle to be able to be here and see really practically what that entails, how things are things are thought and how our projects created, and that really, I think, helps to have a well-rounded view of the region, how it functions, and to think critically about what goes well, what doesn't. And it's very interesting that right now there's the reform and also the new pact for the Mediterranean taking shape. So I feel like although I work, we all work on like concrete projects in the division, all the discussions around it and why they come about, they are very relevant to real life. And it's interesting to see how people perceive changes during this time of reform. So that's a little bit my experience. If you have more questions, I'd be very happy to answer.
I can see the passion in your eyes, Selma, that you're having an amazing experience. So that's a great example also for the people hearing us. And of course, as you said, the floor is open for additional questions on something we touched upon, but also new topics if you want to come up with something related.
I have a question to Selma. I was just like wondering the selection process, if you could just tell a few things about it.
Okay, so the call for application asks for a CV, motivation letter, and then I think very briefly after that, I remember that I was contacted for an interview. I was still at the College of Europe at the time, and we had the interview with all the team. And the questions were about me, but also about specifically the topics that they work on in the division. The selection process, maybe Giulia can help more because she was involved with selecting. But I remember at first, like it's quite fast. So there's a interaction, and then obviously for someone from the like southern neighborhood, I have to go through the process of coming here, so it takes a little bit longer. And this is the information I have. I hope I answered you.
I was laughing because if you want the other point of view of the selection process of Selma, I remember actually interviewing her when I was in Malta. And we were also, I think, Alessandro, you were there for an Annalyn Foundation event. So I remember interviewing her with a very nice sea view. So maybe this helped. I don't know. But no, well, about the selection, of course, let's say, in the case of Selma, but generally, what we really value at the first step when we just read the application is the fact that you spend some time understanding who we are and what we do. So that, for example, from your cover letter, you already like tackle topics or highlight relevant experience that is in line with what our specific division, in this case, social and civil affairs, does. Then, as Selma mentioned in her presentation, having professional experience is not a plus, but it's true that, for example, having also some kind of experience at the university level with university committees, volunteering, or other kind of, let's say, leading roles of active involvement in initiatives, again, relevant for the topics that we work on. So women, youth, at our division, we also work on people with disabilities and civil protection. So having some kind also non-remunerated experience on this really help. And then the interview, of course. The fact that we conduct them online also make easier for the logistics, but then also let's say how smoothly, how confident you are in the interviewing process is also something that we evaluate or take into consideration.
So I wanted to say a quick shout out to Pablo because he also went to the College of Europe and I got to know about this opportunity through his LinkedIn.
The usefulness of social media sometimes.
I think I might have something to ask you, Giulia. By the way, it's nice to see you again.
Of course, Selma, how are
Sorry,
you?
I'm not so much in the foreground. I'm at work right now, so it's a little bit busy here. But thank you for accepting the invitation to be here with us within the NYC members. And same goes for you, Selma. So my question is just has to do with the past mid-youth action. How did you keep an eye on how the projects develop? That's something that that crosses my mind from time to time, and I wonder how did you follow up with the participants?
Okay, so that's a good question because there is a part of follow-up that we ask to our participants in terms of feedback because we really work on building blocks. So, for example, this year edition, the 2025, has this shape, this format, the hybrid format, for example, because it emerged from the feedback we got from previous participants. So, in this sense, we give this kind of continuity. Making sure that what returns to us in terms of feedback is then implemented in other initiatives. Then in terms of implementation of the initiative themselves, no, we don't follow up with them because the way that this first edition, first two editions, so let's say first project, because at the end of the day, we also, I organize the Med-Youth Lab to train people on my work. So this is what we do. Like we also work on Donors Project as the Med-Youth Lab. So this first project, it was kind of a pilot. It didn't foresee, it doesn't include the implementation of the project proposal. Then, what I'm currently working on as part of this reform of the UFM is a more structured proposal, which would run for more than 1 year. Actually, will run for at least 3 years, and where this capacity building part will be accompanied by the implementation of these projects together with the UFM. So the idea is to take the knowledge of this very first experience we do on youth capacity building with the Med-Youth Lab and then scale it up in the next phase starting hopefully in 2026.
Thank you so much, Giulia. That's an excellent initiative. I have to congratulate you for organizing it the last time.
Thank you. Actually, Selma, for example, was involved in the Med Lab as pitch juror. So she was there specifically to give feedback on the project proposal, also to highlight the regional Mediterranean dimension of some of them, and somehow also, let's say, shed the light to the to what the Mediterranean Youth Council does and how this can be also a possible network for people who are involved also with the UFM. So and maybe this helped me also, like, remarking that this approach of having the multi-stakeholder dialogue where youth organization, youth expert, and other parts of the society are involved is applied at every level. So, for example, also the composition of the jury of the Med Youth Lab, of the pitch jury, was going from actually the European Commission. You were there represented. There were some also private sector startups, youth-led startups. So the idea is really like to create this ecosystem at the end of the day where, again, youth is really transversal across like generation, type of stakeholders, and also priorities and topics.
Okay, great. I don't know if anyone else has other questions. If not, I have one. Something that you mentioned before. I'm curious to know how, for example, the consultations again, or the youth's will, what is needed, a bit the opinion that you hear while you do this process. How are they actually implemented in policy side, let's say, or pitched to member states? A bit on this. How do we get to consultation opinions and then to the concrete side of it?
So, I can give multiple answers to this because at the stage that we are as UFM, as organization, we don't have a mechanism in place that is actually systematizing the fact that youth voices are involved in our policy documents or like ministerial declaration. We don't currently have this. And this is totally, this is the core that what I was explaining with this new reform. We are doing this youth mainstreaming process. Part of it will be actually having an external consultation and an external support by a consultant, let's say, to actually draft how in our processes as UFM, when we think, implement, and follow up on our initiative, how we can identify which initiative actually have an impact and a relevance for young people, and how to act on this impact or on this need to involvement in a systematic way at the level of processes of the UFM. So currently, let's say, the models that we imply, for example, are something called the community of practices. So the community of practice are groups very similar to the platform that I mentioned, but that can have a more specific topic. Like, for example, one of the community of practice that is currently in place is the one on youth employment, which is composed by members mainly of the civil society, or in this case, well, also like technical education organizations and academia. And they meet regularly, both online or on site, and they do a series of, let's say, brainstorming and co-creation sessions with the objectives of coming up with a final publication, a final outcome document that will feed the next ministerial that we'll have on employment actually this October. So this is one of the way where that we use to embed, for example, youth voices, in this case, in the on employment. But then again, what we are working on, it's having something that is more institutionalized, that also, again, giving to youth engagement a meaning that at the level of UFM and in the relations with our partners, we understand in the same way. Because I mentioned tokenism, we talked about representation, so we understood that we have to be realistic, but we also need to give the example, starting from us as organization, of the, let's say, implementation of what we preach for. So this is the way forward.
I have a question. I don't know if you addressed it and maybe I missed it, but I was just wondering, do major decisions need to be approved by all of the member states, or is it different? I was just wondering about that.
So at the secretariat level, so decision in terms of our reorganization, for example, the reform process, our thematic priorities, it's everything by consensus. So which means that, well, depending on the topic, member states appoint representatives at the ministerial level, for example, during the regional forum that we organize yearly, where you have where the let's say the ministries of foreign affairs of the countries are represented. But then also at the ministerial conferences and in the ministerial declaration, you will have, for example, when it comes to employment, you will have the land ministers. And so, as I was saying, it's by consensus, which means that also a lot of negotiation is needed, and then sometimes so on some topics which can also be organizational, there is a lot of works in terms of mediating among the different countries and also finding the right balance. Sometimes we see between the point of view of the northern part of the Mediterranean, let's say the European Union, which is represented in its entire let's say composition at the UFM, and the other states, which of course are represented on a national level. So yeah, this is how we do. Sometimes lengthy, so sometimes a lot of negotiations are needed, and sometimes the outcome might be the middle point between very opposite views on specific topics. But the decision-making processes at least at the policy level, it's how it works. And also worth to mention that all the 43 member states of the UFM have exactly the same status and the same voting power. There is one exception with Libya, with an observer status member state, but all the other have the exactly same power and voting power as well as the others.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Super useful question. I actually, reading from the new Climate Action Youth Delegate program that you mentioned before, from the call of action, I was not sure if to understand if it's just one delegate or a batch of people. Perhaps you can tell us more.
It's a batch of people, not just one. I don't recall the exact number of, let's say, spots that are available. But the idea is, yes, is to have more than one, and to also create a kind of alumni community that can also be involved in other initiatives. The idea also, something that we started as part of this young youth dossier we shaped at the UFM, is the fact, as I mentioned, the mapping that we have of youth-led civil society organization, but also trying to put in common our contacts across the different thematic divisions so that we can give some continuity to some of the, let's say, to some of the young, committed people that we involve within our initiative. So definitely they are always a chance to enter, let's say, in the UFM network, and then let's say we usually tend to have a database of the profile we involve so that we recommend them also for other initiatives.
Oh, that's actually super cool. I had the chance to meet some of the climate and youth team with a team at COP29.
Of course.
So I saw the great work that they do, and this program, when I saw it yesterday, I thought they will be for sure successful. So looking forward also for that.
Hatim is behind it, so for sure it will be successful.
For sure.
Could I also ask something regarding this, if possible?
Of course.
Because it's actually very, very interesting, and that's how I found the chat that you guys organized today. So thank you very much for this as well. I wanted to ask, because I read through the details of the call, and I wasn't 100% sure, or maybe it's imposter syndrome, whether it's necessary to have like some very specific expertise on climate change or climate mitigation, adaptation, or energy, or it's more of I already have some experience in it and I'm very, very interested, so I would like to get into it more.
I would definitely say in the second option. So it's not required, again, to have a professional experience or a specific professional background on climate or on energy. But of course, again, some involvement in these topics in terms of training, volunteering, or any other form is favorable. And the interest, the interest in knowing more, also on the institutional dynamics, because the aim of the goal is actually to collaborate with the UFM. And so I would say that this institutional part also would be a plus, even if it's not exclusive of candidates.
Awesome.
I'm really sorry about the drop down of the network. I was talking, so the network cut off. So I'm really sorry about that. So can I have a chance to speak?
Please.
Okay. First of all, I'm the speaker of the Mediterranean of the YT. Okay, in Egypt. So I'm the speaker of Egypt. Okay, Mediterranean of the YT. It's like a youth of the volunteers, a group of volunteers people. The plan is about the plastic free because we are working about to free up the beaches of plastics and like this stuff. Okay, because we know that how plastic is harmful for the fish and of course for the sea and make a very like a very good pollution. So our plan or our like how you say that our goal is to free up the beach or the area about around the sea from the plastic and to make it a free up of the pollution. Okay. The YT it's founded in 22 by two young men from Arish. Our initiative has led beaches cleanup competition across all of the Arish coast.
It seems we lost him again.
Yeah, sounds like it. Simone, I don't know if you had your full answer before.
By the way, on the specific climate youth delegate program, I will, as I mentioned, I will share the slides, and there is also very comprehensive documents with the frequently asked questions. So if you're interested, I would recommend having a look at that. The link will be in the presentation.
Awesome. Thank you.
Welcome.
Are there more questions, comments? I mean, it's an hour, so we can also prepare to wrap up and close. But please take the chance if you have any other more inputs.
See that Mohanna has his hands up, so I think you can take the floor directly.
Good evening. My name is Mohanad. I'm the peer of Izzuddin. And as he said, we are an initiative in Al Arish city in Egypt, and we are involved in environmental working. The ask was about whether we can be like under the umbrella of the UFM because we have problems with guidance and like funds. So this is our like task. If we want to continue this initiative, we need funds and guidance. So we need to know whether you can help or not.
Okay. This is something, actually, thank you for this question, because in terms of funds, like the possibility of UFM to give funds is actually a question that we get a lot. In principle, the UFM is not a donor organization, so it means it's different from GIZ, for example, or actually the European Commission that can give you grants or loans. So we don't do that. We do have one grant scheme But the target also for the budget, it's more for, let's say, bigger civil society organization and also registered one. So I don't know now your specific situation, but movements, for example, or informal organization, not registered organization, wouldn't be eligible for that. So in terms of funding, actually, our support is very limited because, again, we're not a donor. In terms of support or capacity building, like, for example, both the Medyot Lab that is specifically on this, and of course, participants who already have a project or an idea can join. And let's say, for example, with this initiative, the objectives is to refine your capacity to present your project to donors. So not the UFM, but other funding donors that can possibly support your project. The Youth Delegate program of the Energy and Climate Action Division is also including a part on capacity building. So I would say that this kind of support skill, in terms of skills, yes, there are several initiatives, and I would recommend to have a look at the Medyot Lab, which the call for application will be launched in the next 2 weeks, and also to the youth delegate program on energy and climate action. In terms of funding, no. More difficult from the UFM side, at least.
Thank you for your assistance.
You're welcome. So I don't know if some other doubts or curiosity are popping up, or maybe we can wrap up on the discussion.
This means that you explained it very well, Giulia, and then we are coming up with useful questions. The funding one is a big one for sure. Then I'll leave the floor to Alessandro.
Yeah, all right. Now, I think that we can close the discussion for today. It has been extremely useful. I really want to thank Giulia and Selma for being here today and presenting the UFM to us, because as young Mediterranean activists, we hear very much about the UFM, but not for everybody is clear what UFM is. And so I think that today's discussion was extremely useful for this. For the people who don't know the Mediterranean Youth Council very well, I invite them to follow on our social medias. This was one of our Mare Nostrum Talks, in which the Mediterranean Youth Council discusses Mediterranean-related topics. I invite you to hear and to look a little bit more further, not only in the UFM, but also in the MYC, just to give an idea to the people who joined later. The MYC is an assembly of young people from all over the Mediterranean area that through advocacy and actions tries to bring the voice of young people in the Mediterranean. So I think that we can conclude for today. I really thank everybody. I really thank Camilla, who was behind the organization of this initiative. I thank again Giulia and Selma. I thank everybody from the MYC who joined us today, and from L'Été de l'Art as well.